everybody, and welcome to the first episode of a new series I'm calling Tutorials. This is going to be a tutorial about user interface, and so what we're going to do today is build a user interface so that anybody who opens your Excel document is going to be able to easily access all of the data that you have in there without having to go through it themselves, and it gives it a really nice kind of corporate feel so that you can easily access all the data that you need. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go into sheet 1, and we're actually going to put this on a different sheet. Basically, we want to make sure that our data, this is the raw data, we want to make sure that that's kind of hidden away from the user. The user doesn't want to see all of the data, especially if there's a lot more data than this. We're just going on a pretty basic, like 5 different customers is what I'm calling these. So we're going off really basic here, but if there was more data, we would want to hide that from the user because it's unnecessary for them to see in, let's say, for our purposes. And so what we're going to do is we're going to build a user interface here on sheet number 1. First, I want to have them select what data type they'll be looking for, right? And so let's say the user is given Al's beef, right? And they're like, here's Al's beef. Please give them a call and let them know we'd like to discuss their previous sales from last year. Well, you would need more information. You would need the phone number. You would need their annual sales for last year. Maybe you were given the customer number. Maybe you were given the name. Maybe you were just given a phone number. So what we're going to do is we're going to have the user select one of these 4 options up here, and then give them the choice of what they want to pull up based on that. So first thing what we're going to do is I'm just going to separate this a little bit, and we're going to use heading 3 to title this the data type. All right, and so data type is just going to be whatever information the user is given. Okay, and so I'm going to color this cell yellow just so that the user is aware that that's one of the cells that they're able to edit. And then I'm also going to put a heading here as well. And what we're going to put in there is the actual data, right? And so the data type is here, the data is there. What we're going to do is we're actually going to pull a data validation here so that the user can select from a list the different options that are available to them. The source for this, I'm actually going to use an indirect reference. And so indirect is just a formula that pulls any text and converts it to a formula if applicable. And so in this case what I want to do is I want to get the data from the table, right? The table, specifically the header line of the table. And so we're going to start with indirect, which is just going to transmit this table. I know the name is table 4. I haven't changed the name of it, so it's just by default it counts up. The table in the sheet data is actually table number 4. And so if you didn't know that, you can click on here and go over to table, and here's the table name right here, table 4. All right, that sounds good. So we're going to go back to here, data validation, and when we go to list, we're going to do indirect, and we want table 4. And because it's text, I have to use the quotation marks to just signify that that is text, right? And so table 4, and we're going to grab the header row, and that's in brackets. You type the hashtag or pound symbol or number sign headers, and then we're going to close those quotation marks and close the indirect, and there we go. So now we have these different options here: customer number, customer name, and then those are all the different things that we're allowing the user to choose, right? We want the user to say, well, I have the customer number, and I want to enter that number here. Okay, that's great. But we don't want the user to enter the number. We would rather the user pick from a list so that they can enter the actual data, and then there's not some sort of error that happens. We want them to be able to choose from a list, and then that will populate the output of the user interface. And so here, we're going to do another data validation, another list here, and we're going to use indirect again to get table 4. But this time, instead of doing the entire header row, what we want is the column pertaining to customer number in this case, or whatever is selected in the cell B3. And so to do that, what I have to do is actually concatenate the name, customer number, which is selected right there, into this formula. And so what I'm going to do there is use the ampersand sign and then the cell B3, right? And what I want to do actually is use an absolute reference here, because we don't ever want that to change. We want it to be B3 no matter what. All right, and then I'm going to close the bracket. So now, because this little part right here is like an ampersand and then B3 and then another ampersand, what it's going to do is it's going to convert that to text, and it's going to put the text into there and say table 4 customer number in brackets, right? And if I change customer number to name, it'll say name in brackets. That's what we want. We want it to change based on the value in B3. All right, and then I'm going to close those quotation marks and close indirect, and there we go. Now we have another data validation, which has all the different customer numbers, right? And if I want to change this customer number to say like phone, now we have all the different phone numbers in here that we can choose from. And that's what we want. We want the user to be able to select the data type and then the actual data that they're entering, so that they can pull the additional data that they need based on that information. And so just because I know customer name is going to be the longest, I want to resize that to fit Cindy's gift shop because that's the longest one. All right, so now I'm going to put a little, just going to border that so it looks nicer. All right, and then we'll put our output over here, we'll say. All right, so we'll border that right there. And then the output, I actually want all of these. I want to display all of the information that I have based on the information the user has given me. So I'm just going to copy and paste those, and we'll just make those bigger. Now, I don't like that name and phone are so small. I kind of want all these to be the same size, and so I'm just going to grab this and kind of raise that up a little bit. There we go. I like that. That looks better. Okay, so now I want customer number to show up here based on what the user has chosen over here. And so if they choose name and then they choose Cindy's gift shop, I want to display whatever name, whatever number is associated with Cindy's gift shop. So I want to display 3 in that case. The best way to do this is to pull from name down to Cindy's gift shop and display all of this information, right? And so I want to use index because index will give me the row and column number based on this entire table, right? So if I did something like index and this whole table, table 4 was my reference, and I did 1, 1, it's going to display 1 because that's the first row, first column of what I told it, table 4. If I do 1, 2, it'll show Al's Beef. If I do 1, 3, it'll show the phone number for Al's Beef. If I do 1, 4, you get the idea. It will show the annual sales. So that would be the best way to do it. Would be to use index. And so I will do that, index, and the reference that I want is table 4. Okay, and it's going to go away unless I press comma. There we go. So now that I press comma, it's back in there. And so we need a row number. The row number is going to be whatever I'm looking at, right? In this case, it's Cindy's gift shop because I want to see everything in that row. So how do I find the row number? The best way to do that would be to go to the name header, right? And then look for Cindy's gift shop. What you're doing when you're looking for something is you're matching it. And that's actually the formula that we're going to use. The lookup value is going to be Cindy's gift shop. Now I don't want it to be C3, I want it to be the absolute C3 because that's not going to change, right? It's always going to be that cell. And then the lookup array is going to be whatever data type that person has chosen. In this case, it would be name, right? And so they would look in this table for name. That's exactly what I'm looking for. However, it's not always going to be table for name. Because what if, instead of name, they had chosen customer number? Well, what I really have to do then is get the reference for table 4 and the column that they've selected. And so again, I'm going to have to use indirect here. And I want to use table 4. We're going to open that. And this is part of the string that I want to enter. And then the middle part, where it's telling me what column I want to use, that's actually what's in data type. Right? That's what the user has selected. In this case, it would be name. And so I can reference that cell directly by using the ampersand sign, like that. And I don't want to, again, I don't want it to be an indirect reference. I want it to be that absolute reference. And then close that up, like that. Okay, perfect. And then match type, exact match. We want it to be an exact match because I know if they've selected anything from that cell B3, it's one of the things in that drop-down list. So it's going to be an exact match somewhere to one of those headings. And then the last thing that we need is the column number. Well, this particular cell that I'm working on is referencing the customer number, right? And so I want to find in table 4 the column that is labeled customer number, right? And so I'll match again. And this time, my lookup value is actually going to be this cell, right, E2. And so I will do E2, but because I know I'm going to be copying this to the right, I always want it to be the second row. Now, in this case, it's not as necessary that I make it an absolute reference to the row number that I want, but I am going to use that just because if you were ever to copy down, you would still want to have the customer number, the name, the phone. You would still all want those to be in the second row because that's the value that you're looking for, is customer number in this case. The lookup array is actually the header, right? So I want to find where customer number appears in this heading. So I could just select that, table 4 headers. I could also have typed it, and then exact match. And so that would be the end of my column, and I can close that and hit enter. Right? And there we go. It's providing me with the customer number for Cindy's gift shop, which I stated at the beginning was 3. So there it is, and it's providing me that customer number. Now how do I get name? Well, it would be this exact same thing, but instead of using customer number as the reference, I would want to use name. Well, the reason that I typed it in like this and not like this is because I didn't want it to be an absolute reference. I wanted it to be what is known as a mixed reference. I know that it's going to be row 2, but I want it to associate with whatever column that formula is in. And so I delete this, and it's E2, which means if I copy this over, it's copied over F, right? Because now it's in row F. And that makes sense. I want it to find name. Everything else is an absolute reference, and so none of that has changed. It's all still the same. Here, we're matching C3, which is Cindy's gift shop, to table 4 name, right? Because that's what we're still looking for. We're still looking for Cindy's gift shop. We still want that row. But now we want name. We don't want customer number. So that applies here as well. And then we can actually copy those two over, and there you have it. It copied over all the data for us. I'm actually going to change this to a currency format. And what's great about that is that it will stay a currency format no matter what the number is in there. Now, we're going to do a little bit of debugging here because I have a feeling that some of these things won't work out. Cindy's gift shop, if I just select that, nothing's going to change. What's cool here is if I do select something else, then these outputs change because now my input has changed for these formulas, right? And so all of these change, and I can select any of these, and it'll update these cells here. This is our output cell. These are the user input cells. Now, if the user inputs name and then Erica's coffee, it will output this. If the user inputs Erica's coffee first, and then goes here to name and changes it to something like customer number, now that cell C3, that's not changing. The drop-down list has changed, right? But this cell itself has not changed. And so that's one of the issues here. If Erica's coffee had changed to one of these, then these numbers would be populating because it would be able to find it. However, it's giving me this error NA. It says a value is not available for the error, for the formula or function, right? And so the reason it's saying that is because it's looking for Erica's coffee in the customer number column, and it's not finding it, and nor would it, because the values in the customer number are 1 through 5. Erica's coffee is not one of those values. So the easiest fix for this is to use the if error formula, right? An if error is a really, really nice formula. The first thing is the value, and then if it throws an error, for instance, NA error, then it will display the second value. And so I'm just going to put empty quotations, which is a null string. It just displays nothing. That's what I wanted. All right, and then I'll copy that over. There you go. So now in the case that somebody enters one of the data values first, let's say 3, pulls up Cindy's gift shop. If they then change the data type to phone, it will not display anything. It will not output a single thing because now my program has been tailored to the situation where somebody chooses data that is not compatible with the data type. Perfect. It's exactly what I wanted. All right, so now no matter what I select here, I can pull up any of these values, and it shows customer number, name, phone, annual sales. This actually didn't stay as currency, which I find interesting. Let me see if I change this. Now it does. Maybe it depends on the thing that I'm selecting here. Nope, it doesn't. I don't know. That was interesting. But anyway, oh, it's because I changed the formula to if error. That's why it changed. So now it's currency again, so it'll show up like that. So now you have the ability to select anything here, customer number, and then 2, 3, and that's Cindy's gift shop. Perfect. The problem is I gave this out to all of my salespeople, and one of them decided to type in the phone number here. Why would they do that? I don't know. But now, instead of populating like all the other cells, when you change this, it's just that phone number, and it doesn't pull the old one. What am I going to do? Well, the problem is me. I did not initially protect my cells correctly. I know that I can just copy that over, but my salesperson is not aware that he could just copy these cells and that it would fix itself. So now, how do I make sure that doesn't happen again? Well, first off, I'm going to rename this because sheet 1 is not very descriptive. So, how about user interface? That is descriptive. Nobody probably knows what it means, but there you go. How do I protect that so that nobody can delete these cells? I don't want people to accidentally change these. These formulas took me a long time. I want to protect them. Well, the best way to do that is to go to Review tab. The Review tab allows you to protect the workbook, protect the sheet, and in this case, if I protect the sheet, now nobody can delete those. Perfect. It gives me the ability to, I can't change these anymore. How do I do that? Well, each cell actually has a locked feature, and those cells are locked by default, which means if you were to protect the sheet, all the cells in the sheet get locked, and nobody can make any changes to them. You can actually unlock these cells. If I click right here, boom, those are now unlocked. It doesn't seem like it's any different because I haven't protected the sheet, but if I protect the sheet, now I can change these. And now these cells, which are not possible, I can't overwrite those at all. I can't do anything to those cells because they're protected, they're locked. These cells you can still change. There you go. So you've built yourself a user interface, and now you can hand this out to all your salespeople and tell them to If they're given a customer number like 5, then they should call Erica's Coffee, and there's the phone number, and there's the annual sales from last year. Or if you ask your salespeople to call the biggest customer you have, well, that's Bob's Tool right there. Bob's Tools for sure. $250 of annual sales last year. So now you have this ability to work through and pull up data from your table here without actually going through and looking at each individual thing or using your filter options or anything like that. You now have the ability to look through here and select the data, and it will pull up the rest of the data right here, and it's protected so nobody can screw up the formulas, and it's great. The only other thing you would want to do then is actually get rid of this. You don't want anybody to be able to change this data, because if somebody changed the data, then obviously that would change the output. And so one thing you can do is hide this sheet, and then no one would be able to see it. If people are smart, they can go to unhide that sheet. But to prevent that from happening, you can protect the workbook. Protecting the workbook stops people from really doing anything as far as creating new sheets, deleting sheets. Yes, I can delete that. And mostly just the sheets themselves. It also has to do with some other things, but that's mainly what you would use it for. That would be the structure right here. And so you protect it, and there you go. Now nobody can unhide the sheet. Nobody can create a new sheet. I'm clicking, even though it doesn't seem like I am. And so if you protect the workbook and you protect the sheet that you're on, nobody can make any changes to it. Voila, you have yourself a user interface. So thank you for watching this tutorial, and be sure to leave a like and a comment if you saw something that you don't really fully understand and you want me to make a video about it. Let me know in the comments, and I'll be sure to put up a tutorial about that. So thanks a lot for your time. This has been Math Matt with Excel.